Read along with Hugh and Dr. Arnn and enjoy Winston Churchill's My Early Life on a deeper level. Purchase your very own copy of My Early Life at the Hillsdale College bookstore. Just visit hillsdale.edu/radio. Learn about the fascinating first 30 years in the life of one of the most provocative and compelling leaders of the 20th century, Winston Churchill in My Early Life. hillsdale.edu/radio. That's hillsdale.edu/radio to buy your copy of My Early Life.
Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
Morning, glory, and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That music means it's the last hour of the radio and video week, and that means the Hillsdale Dialogue. I began last week with Dr. Arnn talking about Winston Churchill's book, My Early Life. We return to that conversation now. This is part 4 of our discussion of the Winston Churchill book, My Early Life, and it's the Malacan Field Force. Now, Dr. Arnn, we did not read that. That was his first book. And his first book was quite successful. But he's in England, and he's out of Sandhurst, and he hears that his buddy, Sir Blynden Blood, who's been introduced to us in the first chapters, is going to be dispatched with 3 battalions to take care of a mutiny on the Indian frontier. And the first thing he does, he's on leave from his hussar, he gets back on a boat and goes, because he wants to go to the war. This is not an uncommon reaction among young warriors, but his is unusually strong and always present. Wherever there's a war is where he wants to go.
Yeah, he had an instinct, for the action. What he did, when he went to Afghanistan, he got on a train and went most of the length of India up there, and didn't have any arrangement when he got up there, when he left. And by the time he got there, he went and found Blynden Blood, and he got to join up. And then he's up there, and when he was up in Afghanistan, he doesn't tell the story very well but if you're a young soldier, you want to get into the action if you want to get promoted, and especially if you want to go into politics, you want to get your name in the paper. And so he did that by walking up and down, exposed to gunfire behind the British lines, it's rocky up there, and they were hiding behind rocks. And he would walk up and down and expose himself to gunfire, and got mentioned in dispatches, which is a big thing.
Well, let's tell people a little bit about how one gets advancement in the British Army of the late Victorian age. Because although Churchill leads the West to victory in World War II, he's a soldier under Queen Victoria. He's a young hussar. He's a cavalryman. He's a dashing figure in red with a sword and a Mauser. And he's doing whatever he can to get to Afghanistan in, I don't know what year this is, the Malacan Pass, but what had happened is one of the tribes had attacked the British little fort at Chekdara, and the Malacan Field Force was underway, going to be 12,000 men, 4,000 animals. They're going to cross a little wire bridge, and all he wants to do is get there. So the travel, I don't want to take one of these trips, Dr. Arnn. I don't ever want to travel this way, but it reminded me of those young men at Hillsdale who came up to you after you returned from India, last year? And they wanted to go off to India right away, and you wouldn't let them go.
Gotta go. I just did a podcast with Eric Prince, who's a graduate of the college, our college, and he's an adventurer soldier. And I've had a bunch of kids, I want to work for Eric Prince. They're all coming up and saying, it's just exactly the spirit of Winston Churchill, and I'm sending him their names.
Well, good for. I hope they go there. You've got Hillsdale, for the benefit of our new audience, especially in the afternoon and new affiliates that we picked up. Hillsdale runs Washington, D.C. You may not know that, but they do. They are the new Ivy League. If your kid hasn't figured out where to go to college yet, and they're smart and they're willing to work, have them go look up hillsdale.edu. You might want to watch some of the courses there. If they're new to Hillsdale, Larry, what should they start with?
What you will learn here. Half the curriculum is the same for every kid, and it's a comprehensive look at the humanities and the natural sciences. And that means you've got to read a lot of fundamentally important books. And so you will learn first to read those books, which you can start on now at any age. And then you will learn to like them and eventually love them. And that's the thing that we talked about earlier in the program. At some point, it captivates you. You know, you'll do it. Most people do it out of duty in the beginning, and that's a very good thing to do. And it's a sort of form of suffering. But at some point, it becomes a compulsion, and then you're on your way. And then you can learn. You can learn anything after that.
What number
of
people are you now graduating from Hillsdale who are going into the uniformed services? Because our friend Mel was up there teaching this week, and you have Marine Corps General retired wandering through there every now and then to teach leadership and teach courses. I'm curious if it's remained constant or increased in recent years, the number of graduates who are seeking to serve the military.
Well, as far as I can tell, it's, so we graduate about 350 a year, and there might be 10 to 20 going to the military. It's a big number for, and we don't take the ROTC stuff because it carries the federal strings. So we have our own professional military training program that we fund ourselves. And there's usually 30 kids in that or 40 kids in that at a time. And we've got, faculty members who are retired military, and the immediate past Commandant of the Marine Corps is a Hillsdale College parent, Brent Neller, and he comes here and teaches, and some other ones too. And so they do PT at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And suffer. And there's, I'm having lunch today with some students in my class, and one of them's going into the Marine Corps. And he's just the kind, when you talk to him, he's not required to salute yet, but he'd like to. And,
is he a senior, or is he doing his first summer at Quantico in the 2-summer program?
He did it last summer. He's a senior.
So he's a senior. So he's going to commission and go to OCS.
Yeah, that's right.
Good for him.
He'll commission on the day. We have a plan now to build a war memorial to our war dead and the war dead more generally in the North Quad, which we're spending a lot of money on right now. And we'll be able to have the commissioning ceremonies under that war memorial.
Oh, wow. Who is the sculptor? I asked because Victor Davis Hanson did a podcast for the Salem Podcast Network not long ago. I haven't listened to it yet, with the sculptor of, I believe, the World War I monument that was recently unveiled in
David
Washington,
Howard.
D.C.
Yeah, that's right.
And
so
it's a beautiful monument. I haven't seen it yet. I'm told by Victor, and I trust Victor, it's a beautiful monument. What is yours like?
Well, ours is going to be a structure, open air, kind of largish. It's going to be designed by Duncan Stroik, who designed our chapel. And Sabin Howard is busy right now. He's a buddy of mine. And he's busy right now getting ready to do something for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence next year. And when that's over, he will likely do something here at Hillsdale. And so we'll have a sculpting.
Have you resolved yet on a plan for the 250th anniversary of the opening of the Revolutionary War in April?
We have.
Okay.
Thank you. We're doing something for the Battle of Lexington Concord next month.
Excellent.
And we're working on a movie to be released on Memorial Day, probably on Netflix or Fox Now or something. And we got a fancy producer and director, and we got a bunch of scholars working on it. And we're probably going to make a movie here in the next 4 or 5 months, 6 months. And it'll be a 10-part series. It'll start on Memorial Day and end on the 4th of July. And it'll be about the Declaration of Independence and the founding of the country.
Oh, that is, I make my law students watch Adams because Paul Giamatti is Adam. It's the best television made about it, but it could be better because it moves so fast it does not tell the backstory of Sam Adams or the backstory of the resistance to the Declaration or the backstory of Franklin or the backstory of it moves too fast. It has to. It's 20 years old. Let me go back to.
Go
ahead.
You're right. It is very, very good. The thing we're going to do, and can we do it well? Probably. Our online courses are good, and we got a big online course released this fall that goes Colonial America to the Founding, and we think that's going to be very good.
Oh,
and our thing will be a mixture of scholars explaining the story and actors playing the story out.
Very good. Docudrama. That's going to be good to look forward to. Lots over at hillsdale.edu. All of the previous Hillsdale Dialogues, including the first 3 episodes dealing with Churchill's My Early Life, are all found at hughforhillsdale.com, hughforhillsdale.com, or head over to hillsdale.edu for applications to the college, information on the college, all the video courses, eventually that movie as well.
It's no secret that Americans are more divided than ever. And it's not just over what policies will improve our great country. No, it's over whether America is great at all, whether America deserves our love. That's why Imprimis is so important. Imprimis looks at the issues of the day from a constitutional perspective, reminding citizens always of our great heritage of liberty. For more than 50 years, Imprimis has featured speeches from the smartest conservative thinkers and writers at Hillsdale events. These days, Hillsdale publishes people like Molly Hemingway, Andy Puzder, Harmeet Dillon, and Chris Rufo. Over 6.4 million American households and businesses receive Imprimis absolutely free. And I urge you to sign up for it today at no charge. To get your free lifetime subscription, go to hillsdale.edu/lifetime right now.
Welcome back, America. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. I'm talking with Dr. Larry Arnn about my early life, but I also have been doing some Hillsdale Dialogues when he's been away with other people, as I refer him to. When you were gone for a week, Professor McClay filled in for you, author of Land of Hope. What a wonderful man. You mentioned earlier about teachers who are like your grandpa, and he used a phrase which it was now stuck. I'm going to tattoo it to my head, which is, I am objective but not neutral about my country. So isn't that a wonderful phrase?
Yeah, he's of course one of our best guys and very fine man. He wrote that excellent book, and Roger Kimball, a friend of mine, Hillsdale parent, Encounter Books, got him to do that, which I regard as one of Roger's greatest among many great
services.
services.
It should be in every classroom in the country. I make my law students read it because law students don't know anything. They know how to pass the bar, and they know cases, but they don't.
When I read the book, I called Bill McClay. He was a professor at the University of Oklahoma, famous guy already. And I said, how are you? And he said, I'm great. He said, a big admirer of Hillsdale. And I said, thank you. I said, because you're coming to work here.
Was he surprised? Because that's a switch.
Yeah.
Oklahoma to Hillsdale is a switch.
It's a really great story because he does then come, and he has a son who's got an excellent classics professor from PhD from Berkeley, wasn't ruined by that. And so I'm standing talking to Bill McClay and his wife, Julie, whom I'm meeting for the first time. And I said, and Bill said, I know you talked to me about working here. He said, but I want to talk to you about my son. He's got his PhD. He's a Hillsdale kind of guy. He's a superb Greek and Latin teacher. And I said, and he wants a job at Hillsdale College. We got the best classics department in the country. He said, yeah. And I said, well, there's a problem. And he said, what? And I said, I really only hire on the family plan. and Julie reached over and took Bill's arm. And I pointed at her hand on his arm, and I said, and I see that can be done.
Well, that's why you want the wife and mother around conversations like that. They're attuned to things like that. Let me go back to Churchill.
That's right.
He's writing about the Malacan Field Force. They're going up to the Afghan frontier, where the Brits have not fared well for 200 years. And he wrote, elaborate codes of honor exist among the tribes. But the 19th century had brought the breech-loading rifle and the British government to the frontier. The Brits used both the rifles and subsidies. And Churchill kind of approves of the way they fight these wars, but it is a point of honor on the Indian frontier. Again, we're on the Afghanistan border, not to leave a wounded man behind. Death by inches and hideous mutilation are the invariable measure meted out to all who fall in battle into the hands of a Pathan tribesman. So he's not going. It's not unlike the wars of our West against, again, you introduced me to the book on the Comanche Soldiers of the Harvest Moon or something like that. They're children of the Harvest Moon. Is that whatever?
Children of the Summer Moon.
Children of the Summer Moon. They are violent. Yeah. They are incredibly punishing of their captives. Where does that come from? Churchill notes it, but he doesn't explain it.
Well,
it's not in the Greek and Roman society, is it?
Yeah. War is very fierce, and every people can be very fierce. But to different degrees, I would say. The Comanche were a tribal people, right? And the difference between them and us is more fundamental than in a country where we claim all men are created equal. And so those doctrines ameliorate war somewhat, but we too can be very fierce and have been.
When our dander gets up, you don't want. Oh yeah. You do not want to be up against us when that happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen. I talked to Secretary Rubio this week about the Chi-Coms, and I don't know that they believe we are the same people that won World War II, and that's a problem. That's why I'm so interested in Yalta right now. And I wrote a couple of columns this week on FDR, Churchill, and Stalin versus Hitler. Now we've got Trump and Netanyahu versus Xi and Putin, and we're lucky to have Trump because, and we're lucky to have Netanyahu because Biden was not the guy to go up against those guys. And you've just got to be able to match your state's people against their state's people.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you need to be tough. And Trump's watchword this administration has been common sense. And so he brings common sense along with toughness to this thing. And he's trying to make a deal. And that seems right to me. And I hope he can get one done. Now,
it's interesting about the deal. That goes back to Churchill. He's in the Mamoon Valley with Colonel Lyndon Blood. And they've got to put down this Afghan tribe that's massacred some people. And he writes, when, however, we had to attack the villages on the sides of the mountains, they resisted fiercely, and we lost for every village 2 or 3 British officers and 15 or 20 native soldiers. Whether it was worth it, I cannot tell. At any rate, at the end of a fortnight, the valley was a desert, and honor was satisfied. That's a very pregnant paragraph, Dr. Arnn.
Yeah. And the last paragraph of his Malifaux Field Force is called The Riddle of the Frontier. And the question it asks is a question that we have faced in Afghanistan. And that is, what the heck are we going to do? Because Afghanistan is these mountains, right? Long, the mountains sort of go through Afghanistan. They sort of go, northeast to southwest down toward India. And in between the mountain ranges, there are these valleys, and they're kind of isolated, this valley from the next one over. And it's a very insular place, right? It can be 5 miles to a valley on the other side, and it can be a 1-week journey to get there. And so what they do is they live in their little villages, and they farm, and they raise some whatever they raise. And then once in a while, and they're very fierce people, and once in a while they go right over the border into India, burn and pillage and steal. And so what are the British going to do about that?
We'll come back and find out what the British are going to do about that. Stay tuned. I'll continue my conversation with Dr. Arnn after the break.
Read along with Hugh and Dr. Arnn and enjoy Winston Churchill's My Early Life on a deeper level. Purchase your very own copy of My Early Life at the Hillsdale College bookstore. Just visit hillsdale.edu/radio. Learn about the fascinating first 30 years in the life of one of the most provocative and compelling leaders of the 20th century, Winston Churchill in My Early Life. Hillsdale.edu/radio. That's Hillsdale.edu/radio to buy your copy of My Early Life.
Welcome back to the Hillsdale Dialogue, America. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. At the break, Dr. Arnn, you were talking about what the Brits would do on the Indian frontier when the Afghans would cross over to loot and plunder.
So there are three policies, and one policy is called the policy that Churchill took part in, he called it butcher and bolt. Go over there and kill a bunch of them back, and that'll deter them somewhat. And then get ready, you're going to have to go back again another time. And then they think, let's take the passes. The Afghans come over these passes into India, and we'll deny them coming over. Well, then you got a bunch of soldiers living up on top of a mountain. And that's kind of hard. You got to supply them, and it's cold up there. And so then that's the middle policy. And the third policy is called the forward policy. And let's go down to the other side and control the approaches from the other side. Then you got a bunch of soldiers on the other side, and they're all...
And it's the same problem that Alexander the Great ran into, that the British ran into, that the Russians ran into, that the Americans ran into. It is not a place for civilization as we understand it. It's a place for tribes.
As they understand civilization, it is very much.
Yes, it's the my friend Stephen Pressfield, the novelist, has an entire website devoted to it's the tribe stupid. And to a certain extent, the Middle East is also the tribes. And we are not that people. Yeah. There were tribes when we got here. There are still tribes. They've been reduced in their sovereignty to their original reserves. But I want to conclude this way before we run out, because Churchill on the Press appears in this first book. Now, Churchill deals with the press. You explained in the last couple of weeks. He's always writing for someone. He is both a soldier and a journalist for the first 35 years of his life, or 25 years of his life. But he's engaged by the military to suppress a story. And he doesn't even blink in doing so. He's writing for the Telegraph. His book on the Malacan Field Force comes out. The Prince of Wales sends him a letter saying, that must be nice to get the Prince of Wales saying, I like your book. He's playing polo. He gets appointed to the staff of the Generalissimo, a guy named Sir William Lockhart. I became the close personal attendant to the captain of the host. And then the captain of the host is mumbling because some journalist is writing about the expedition in the Fortnightly Review. And Churchill solves the problem by sending the editor a note, because one gentleman won't disparage another gentleman. That's from a long time ago, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but, and Churchill was up against the edge of the protocols of that time, because he was, he had a lot of trouble. He writes these books, and the books are very interesting. If you read the very first ones, they're not quite as mature as Churchill at his peak, in my opinion. I think the River War may be. But he's a young man learning how to do it. And he goes out there and he sees these things, and he's got these immense powers of articulation. And he tells the story of the war, and it's very popular. And people read it like crazy. They're bestsellers. And he's highly paid for columns about battles in which he's taking part. And darned if he doesn't talk about the generals. And he's the second lieutenant. And so, what? They think, you can't do that. Well, he does it quite a lot.
You know who did that as well? Our friend Senator Cotton took up the pen, I believe, from Iraq. It might have been Afghanistan, and wrote disparagingly of something. Both? Oh, well, he wasn't both places, but he just, I wonder, do you think he was, I've never asked him, was he moved by the Churchill parallel? I've got to speak up.
He knows about it. I've talked to him about it. What he was doing, as memory serves, was defending the military effort there against journalists who were decrying the army, and the effort. And see, the effort, both those wars, in my opinion, first of all, we fought. We probably fought as well in Afghanistan as anybody ever fought there. My quibble, and at the time, was with the war aims. Right? The CIA got a videotape of a dinner where Osama bin Laden is explaining how he organized the attack on the Twin Towers. Right? So we know he did that. Eventually, we killed him for it. But so to go there, Afghanistan has attacked the United States of America. We can attack them back, but then and we should have, and we did it well. And at first, we had a very elegant strategy where we pitted one bunch of Afghans against another, mostly special forces.
I'll say pause right there, Dr. Arnn. We're going to come back and continue what we did right and what we did wrong and what we didn't learn from Churchill's My Early Life and what we might want to learn from My Early Life going forward. Stay tuned to the Hillsdale Dialogue, all of them at HughforHillsdale.com. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway with Dr. Larry Arnn. When we left it, we were talking about what America did after it was attacked, and I remember it very well. The Northern Alliance and General Mattis came into the middle of the desert with the Marine Expeditionary Force behind them. It was over in 3 months. It was done.
That's right. That's right. And then the question about all that war is the attempt to stay and build a new kind of civil society there. And I know that many of the people who made that decision back in the day, we talked about this at the beginning, they thought that they were following in the footsteps of Winston Churchill. But Winston Churchill specifically did not try to do that. As a matter of fact, in his whole life, Winston Churchill never proposed the addition of anything.
Yeah, one of the bad things I've learned, I talked about it with Lord Roberts, is that George Marshall was so successful in rebuilding Europe and MacArthur was so successful in rebuilding Japan that it created a mythology that American will succeed in rebuilding its enemies into its own image. And it ain't going to work that way.
Yeah, and, it hasn't really worked that way. It just turns out that democracy is a form of government that you cannot do for somebody else. And look, I once heard a great lecture by D.C. Watt, a late historian who was a serious, big-time historian like Andrew Roberts is today. And he talked about why it worked in Japan and Germany and why it didn't work in Germany after the First World War. And his answer was, we leveled the place. We reduced it to rubble. And they saw then that their way didn't work. They picked a fight and they got hammered. And the same thing with Japan. And so the opportunity to start over was prepared by that.
Let me close today by telling people, you and I, you've been gracious enough, and Hillsdale's been gracious enough to invite Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I to go along on the HillsdaleCollegeCruise.com. Has that sold out, by the way? I don't do cruises anymore, but I'm going with you guys because you do all the work, and I get to hear some great lectures as opposed to give them all. But if we have time, I would love to interview you about Churchill for that group. I think we are in a pressing moment now where we have to educate people about Winston Churchill. We've been doing it accidentally. We kind of backed into it on the Hillsdale Dialogues, but it's become a pressing need because he is a statesman and we need statesmen.
Yeah, that's right. And he's this, like building democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan, in my opinion, at the time is too much. Pretending that we can live of our own here without questions of freedom of the seas, that's too much in the other way.
That's too little. Yeah.
That's right. It's, it's like mortar fire, right? We go too far. Now we've gone too short. I hope we're at the target now. But what you can learn from Churchill is a blessed discipline called strategy, which is, in Churchill, the way he uses the word, it's frequently a synonym for economy. You've got to find the cheapest way to get the job done. And that, because especially if you live in any country, you have to do that because resources are not unlimited.
2 weeks ago, Dr. Arnn, the annual report on the Chinese military capability was published. And you and I, in an earlier Hillsdale Dialogue series, covered the world crisis. At the beginning of the world crisis, a land power, Germany decides to embark upon an expansion of its naval power, which sets in chain a series of events that leads to the world crisis, World War I. China is a land power, and they've always been a land power. They've always had 1 million people in a standing army. They have set about doing what the Kaiser did, and I fear this. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and it sure is rhyming right now. Have you noticed this? That a land power in Asia is building a naval expeditionary force like the Kaiser did in the turn of the century?
Very worried about it. Yeah, sure. The questions, I support the current administration very much. I'm going to go tomorrow and watch them sign a bill, an executive order. But they're trying to repair the manufacturing base of the country and trying to make the military lethal and nimble and dollar for dollar better able to defend the country and hurt its enemies. And that's the thing, right? That's a general redirection of the government of the United States. And they're trying to make the government more economical, right? And that's, of course, the struggle of the age. And we have to win that struggle in order to get ourselves in a place where we can deter China. And another thing that's going on is, I had Peter Thiel say to me one time, years ago, and he's a very smart guy, as you probably know. And I said, how are we going to compete with China? And he said, well, we can't beat them with technology. They're really good at that. We can match them. He said, and they're a lot bigger than we are, but they're not a lot bigger than the world. And so we should get the world, because as a rule, countries that dominate other countries are not popular in those countries, and that's China's way. It has been our way a little bit, our imperial sort of policy with our transgender flags in very religious countries is a little bit smacks of intrusive imperialism. But if we go back to our way, which is we just want people to be free and elect their own government and live the way they want to, and we want Europe to get itself in order and build up some military so they can defend them.
And they need to do that. They absolutely need to do that. I'm going to come back for the conclusion of this week's Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Larry Arnn. I do want to remind everyone, if you go to HillsdaleCollegeCruise.com, I don't know if they've sold out. They're close to selling out. I'm going to go on the cruise with Dr. Arnn this year. HillsdaleCollegeCruise.com will give you all the information about this remarkable journey we're taking. Begins in Portugal. It ends up in London. Also want to remind you, everything Hillsdale is found at hillsdale.edu, and all of the prior Hillsdale dialogues, and there are hundreds of them, can be found at hughforhillsdale.com. That's hughforhillsdale.com. But if you want the application for yourself, your son, your daughter, your grandkids, or you just want to enjoy one of the video courses, you're tired of the garbage on YouTube, head to hillsdale.edu. It's all collected there. It's a magnificent website. Every college should have a website that well designed, hillsdale.edu. Coming back for the last part of this week's Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Arnn right after this. Welcome back, America, the Hillsdale Dialogue, final segment here. And at this point, with Dr. Arnn, I tell him a little bit about Richard Nixon. Have I told you what Richard Nixon's summary objective was when I was a young man and worked for him? The ongoing expansion of liberty, ongoing incremental expansion of liberty and literacy in the West and countries allied with it. That should be the overarching objective of American foreign policy. I agree with that. I may have been too enthusiastic about Iraq, but I did believe they had WMD, and it was after 9/11. When we return, we're going to pick up with Chapter 8, a difficulty with Kirchner. But I believe in between, we're going to get an update on your visit to Washington, and we're going to do a scorecard in the first 100 days. I think we'll be about 100 days or about 90 days in. Last 2 minutes, you, Dr. Arnn. Are you an optimist about how the administration has begun?
Oh, yeah. It's a fight. I'm a Churchill optimist. Churchill always thought, it's going to be a hell of a problem, and then we'll win. Huh? And I think that's what's happening right now. I think it's going to be it is a struggle about the kind of government and life we are going to live. It affects everything. And so it's going to be like that. And sure enough, they're burning Teslas And
terrorism.
What's that about?
And we've got Republicans in the House who want to impeach district court judges just because they're ideological extremists and wrong. We do not want to make impeachment. We don't want to ratchet up impeachment back to the days of when Jefferson tried to get Salmon Chase off the court. We need
a bill. I mean, first of all, you're softer on the courts than I am, Hugh Hewitt, because you're a lawyer and you can't help it. But the truth is, all you got to do is read Alito and Thomas on whether these district judges
they cannot do these injunctions anymore. They can't. And
the point is, you can do that with an ordinary bill in the Congress.
Yes.
And they should do that
yes.
tomorrow.
We don't need to impeach anyone. We weaponized the Department of Justice. We impeached Donald Trump twice. We need to lower the volume and up the smarts in this. And what you just said is exactly, and we can control the jurisdiction of the federal courts. Perfectly constitutional to do that. It requires using the muscles that the Congress hasn't used for a long time. We're out of time, Dr. Arnn. I want to thank you. My Early Life, we will continue. Then we're going to go to Marlboro. Now, Marlboro is a big book, and you got to go get it and get ready for it. And then Dr. Arnn and I are going to talk about whether or not we do World War II to save Churchill from the Coopers out there. My gosh, that guy is, you're much less.
That. We can think about doing that next.
Before Marlboro? Before Marlboro?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. You're running this railroad. I'm just the talent.
Yeah, you are the talent, and I admit that. Hillsdale.edu. Dr. Larry Arnn, thank you. Safe travels to D.C. I think that's very funny. He is indeed the talent, and if he wants to do Winston Churchill's 6-volume history of World War II, I would encourage you to go and order it now. There are a gazillion sets of them. They're not expensive. You can get them in paperback or hardback. Go to Amazon and go to the used bookstore. 2 things, the Churchill World War II books and Marlboro by Churchill, which is a little bit harder to find. Meanwhile, all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.